Welcome to Tech Simplified, and my name is Sly Gittins, and today I'm continuing the dynamic woman in tech conversation with Valerie Osinski. She is going to share her phenomenal story with you, and I know my audience, all of you, are going to enjoy it. She has so many gems to talk because we had a great conversation before she got on here today. So Valerie, would you please share your background, your journey on getting into your first position?
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me today. I'm super excited. Yes, I'm Valerie Osinski, and I am today the CEO of RevTech 360, and we are a Salesforce partner focusing on implementing MuleSoft and Salesforce products. I grew up in the south end of Columbus, Ohio, and from very, very, very humble beginnings, and didn't have a lot, worked hard. Our family worked really hard, and I was the oldest of 6 children. And when I was growing up, since we didn't have a lot, I always had a goal to go to college, and no one else before me had gone to college. So I worked really, really hard to go to college, and I ended up applying and getting into the Ohio State University, which was, a big deal, and I was really excited to get in there. However, since I was the first one who went to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I'm 17 years old. I get into Ohio State. It's a dream, and then it was like, now what, right? And I kind of looked around back then, looked around at different careers, and decided that I would go into this new field called computer science. And the main reason was because I was looking around and saying, like, well, it looks like there's these computer things are gaining popularity. A lot of people are getting them. This was back in the 80s, so it was quite some time ago. And so I decided that I'd go that way. And so I started to talk to people about it. And what I noticed too is I noticed that there's a lot of boys who were going into computer science. And so I decided, well, shoot, I'm 17. I'm good at math and science. It looks like this is the way to go. And maybe I'll meet a boy, right? Which is kind of crazy. But I went in, I did really well. I enjoyed it. It was, like I said, it was sort of a new thing. And once I got out, and when I got out, it was the recession. It was in the 80s. It was a recession. And a lot of my friends who had gone to college weren't finding jobs. And I was super fortunate because I got my senior year, I actually got 3 different job offers for 3 different paths. One to sell computer software, one to go into just the classical development path, and another one to go into insurance, which had nothing to do with really what I had gone to school to do. And I decided to go the path of kind of the traditional, and I went and chose a position at a company called Owens Corning. And Owens Corning at the time had a great training program, and they brought in like 16 of us from out of colleges, different colleges around the area, and put us through a pretty intense training where we went into different business units and learned a lot. I ended up staying there 13 years. It was really awesome. The first 7 or 8, I was in computer science, right? I was in like development, and I was doing some really cool projects from like automating the plant systems of the roofing plants. And I traveled all around the country and did things like that. And ultimately then they promoted me into a sales position, which completely outside of IT, right? So I go into sales, and I enjoyed that and moved to, that was one of my first relocations. I moved to Atlanta and was in sales down in Atlanta. Learned a ton, right, about being in, how technology could apply to a sales position. And we at the time were using a CRM system where I had to enter all my, my information in about the calls I was making. But anyway, I progressed through that. And I know you want to know how I got to where I am. I've got a lot of experience. I'm going to kind of jump forward. I left Owens Corning after 13 years and got into a company called Aon, a consulting, where I was asked to run sales and marketing. So again, I'm super far away from tech at this point, right? So I've gone sales, I'm going up through management. Now I'm over here doing a bigger sales and marketing job, and then was promoted into running the entire operations of one of the divisions. Again, far from technology in a way, although when you run a business, there's always technology. Yeah. So I had it under my portfolio, if you will, but I wasn't in the technology field. And then I jumped over and went into a company where I was running professional services in a technology company. And so now I'm sort of back into tech, but a little peripheral to it. And then I went into another one like that, where I was head of professional services in a tech company. And then I got promoted into a president of an operating division, which I had never done, right? So here I am running, it was about a $25 million business. So not huge, but pretty intimidating at the time, right? I'd not really done it. So I ended up going into this president role. And so I had responsibility for everything, right? Product, finance, sales, marketing, operations, everything. And did that for quite a bit. At this time, I'm at a company called First Advantage. And so I was there for a little bit in that role. And then the head of the company asked me to take on a larger role and run a very large business unit, which, again, I'm scared to death, right? I was already at $25 million. Now this is moving me up to a $250 million business unit and about 3,500 employees globally. So talk about being a little intimidated, but, I thought, okay, I can do this, right? And I had some good mentors who told me I could do it. So I go into that and did quite well, right? We grew the company, grew the profitability. My kids were fairly young at the time. We'll get back to that in a second. Yep. Balancing career and kids, because that's something I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I moved through that. And then one day, the CEO came to me and said, Valerie, I'd like to move you into the CTO position, or it was actually global CIO of the company. And I think at this point, I had been out of tech per se for like 15 years, right? And I laughed and I said, are you crazy? No way. There's no way I'm doing this. But I said, I'm too, I haven't been in it for a long time. He came back to me 3 times. And on the 3rd time, I said, okay, I'll do it. Right. So I moved from running a $250 million business unit into running IT for a global company. Wow. Had no idea, Sly, what I was doing. Everything had changed, right? So I would sit in meetings and I didn't know some of the buzzwords anymore. I'm all of a sudden like talking about infrastructure and cloud and security and development methodology and things that I hadn't touched in years. And I quickly had to reach out to my network and have them reteach me kind of current technology. And so talk about being very intimidating. And on top of that, I was almost always the only female in any situation. So here I was in a role that I internally felt like, why am I here? I'm not qualified to do this. And then externally, I had the pressure of being one of the only females in a global CIO role. It was a moment in my life where I had to power through it, lean on people, a lot of people. And there are so many people I, thank regularly for helping get me through. But over time, I kind of caught myself back up and I looked around and thought, well, shoot, I know what I'm doing. I can do this, right? And so, at that point, I went out of running. I was in IT, ran businesses, back into IT and really high level roles. And I really just started to enjoy it. And then I moved from that role into another CTO role for a nonprofit because I wanted to kind of go into a give back to some degree, although the nonprofit, it was Project Lead the Way, was run like a business, so it felt comfortable to me. But they had a real big issue in that their technology was way behind, and I had a passion. It was helping STEM education. So it was one of my passions, which we'll get back to in a minute. I had the opportunity to take my leadership in just business leadership, my leadership in IT, and go apply it to a passion area. And I got the opportunity to refresh the student experience and really showcase what technology could do to help a business. And at that point, we were all in with Salesforce. So this was one of my first big indoctrinations into the Salesforce ecosystem. And so it was super fun, and it culminated with a complete refresh, and Salesforce actually let us be on stage at Dreamforce to talk about what we did, which was really cool. And I never thought that would happen. And it wasn't my goal. My goal was to make a difference in the students' lives through technology and teachers' lives. And ultimately we did that and got some recognition for what we did. And then that sort of took me on a path toward that Salesforce ecosystem, right? And I left there. I did some consulting on my own. I thought that's what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to end my career and have, hang my shingle up and do my own thing. And I did that for about a year, but then I was tapped on the shoulder to join a Salesforce practice called Lev, and they needed someone to help them scale and grow the company. And so I decided to join that because I loved the CEO was just awesome. The team was awesome. And I did that. So I moved into a role of back sort of out of tech. I was back into a COO role. Okay. And I ran probably 90% of the company. When I joined, we were 20 million. We sold a year later. We were at 43 million. And I stayed about another year and 3 months. And when I left, we were about 56 million. So it was a wow. Decent size, but a high growth. And then I joined where I'm at, right? The CEO of RevTech 360, and we are a Salesforce partner, as I mentioned, focused on MuleSoft. In addition, I took a couple board spots. So long, because I got 35 years, long way to get me, but that's how I got to where I am, right?
No, that was a phenomenal story. And it's just, I love your ability to change when you needed to, right? You didn't say like, you know what, I went to school for computer science, so I'm going to stick to coding. Or I could see like throughout your career, you realize like, maybe I need to try something different, or opportunity. It seemed like you were intentional and opportunistic, right? So when opportunity presented you, like when you talked about going from 15 years being removed from tech, that's a long time, because 3 years removed from tech is like you become a dinosaur, right? So, but how comfortable, or it would seem like how comfortable you were with being uncomfortable, right? And then also leaning on your network and the team that you provided to kind of get you up to speed, because you probably realize that you didn't need to be the expert, because the team that you're surrounded around and your network were experts. So if you need to bring someone in, but that shows the ability to be a leader, the ability to scale, and also the ability to, again, stay calm. Because most people, I would assume, would be like, you know what, let me talk myself out of that. I'm good right here. I don't really want to relearn it, right? So I think you shared a lot of gems that I think is impactful. Like I'm starting to learn in my career, right? I switched out when I started school. I went to school at the University of Buffalo, and I ended up doing business and then, IT and marketing. And then when I got out my first job, it was a network engineering job. Found out that I didn't like, working by myself and as a network engineer. So I ended up switching to tech support. So that was like a step back. But I also knew it was a good place that I was going into, because it was a pre-sales tech support where you can talk, architect, and build solutions. And luckily, the company I worked for, Ingram Micro at the time, had access to the distributor. They sell everything. So you get to find out what you like. So I was like a kid in the candy shop, right? And I did some time in sales because I realized, all right, I'm technical, but how do I make the phone ring? How do I find a customer? How do I get comfortable at understanding business requirements or the sales strategy, working with the tech team? And then, I got to learn a little bit about public sector, a little bit about private sector, healthcare, so then I switched technologies, went from virtualization, data center, like hardware, to security, to cloud. And now I'm switching into like data and AI, which, a jack of all trades, but you get to see trends before they happen and how to use some of that leverage, some of that information in the past. But then now I'm going into more of a management role eventually, right? So that experience helps me now, so I can connect a little bit more with my team and there's different skill sets. But I liked what one thing you shared is just, I think your willingness to be uncomfortable. And the willingness to take time, because 35 years is a long time, and some people get comfortable and stagnant, right, in one area, right, and that's how they don't grow. But it seemed like you enjoy growing. So with that being said, it kind of nicely gets into the next question. And what would you told yourself earlier in your career?
I think I would have told myself way younger to not be afraid, right? You can do more than you think you can do. And I learned that, right? And I got scared a lot, but I did it anyway. But I wish I would have been able to tell myself, you got this, right? You can do it. And, it's okay to take a chance. And, if you fail, just learn from it. But odds are you're not going to fail. Just get grit and determination, keep going. And, I unfortunately got to the place where I was catapulted into that. And about 6.5 years ago, I had a tragedy hit. My husband passed away literally in my arms. It was a jolting thing, right, as you can imagine. But I had one of those moments where I can wallow in self-pity and like, oh my gosh, what has happened to me? Or I can pick myself up and move forward. And I chose the second, right? And I really embraced the carpe diem, which is, seize the day, seize the moment. And it was, I got to tell you this story, because I was at an event in Chicago. I'm actually in Chicago right now getting ready for a board meeting. But I was in Chicago years ago, was shortly after my husband passed. And it was a CIO by invitation only event. And it was put on by Dell. Yeah. And so I walk into this room and there's probably, I don't know, maybe 100 people in the room. And I looked around and unfortunately, most times when I walked into a room, I was the only female in this room. And I had learned to not be as intimidated, right, by that. But I will tell you honestly, and a lot of times I would go in those situations and I'd maybe talk to people at my table and I'd leave because I didn't venture out as much, But after my husband passed, I thought, you know what, I just got seize the moment, right? So I'm in this situation, all these people, Michael Dell's up on stage and he's speaking. He wasn't too far. He was actually at a little table not far. It's a pretty small venue. After the venue was over, I picked up my stuff and I was going to leave, like I always do, right? And I stopped. I said, no, I'm not doing it this time. And I walked right up to the front of the room, and Michael Dell, and I don't know Michael Dell's very tall, and I'm only about 5'6". I don't know, he's tall. And I go right up to him and I look up at him, and he, because he knew, here's the benefit of being the only female. He knew who was in the room and he knew who I was, because it's not hard to pick me out of a crowd, right? When you're the only girl. But so he knew a little bit about me. He had read my bio, but I went right up to him and I said, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too, Valerie. And we had a little conversation. I said, there's something you need to do, Michael. He said, well, what's that, Valerie? I said, did you notice the dynamic of the room or the demographic of the room? And he's like, puts his head down. Yeah. But you Michael Dell need to do something about this. You can do something about it, and then you need to get more women involved in technology. You need to empower others, and you need to spread this. You need to fix this, and whatever I can do to help, I'll help. And he was like awesome, and he hooked me up with some of his people, and we had some good conversations. But I'll tell you, so I walked away from that like, yes, I got to talk to Michael Dell, and I told him, that we need to work on this together. I would have never done that before, Sly. So that was, if I could have told my younger self, I probably passed up, I don't know, dozens and dozens of those opportunities in the past. I wish I would have taken advantage of them way before that moment.
That's beautiful. And I think that is something that, so each time you do it, you don't realize the opportunities or the doors you could have opened, right, with that. And sometimes it's so easy to get stuck on your comfort level, right? Especially for me, most people think, I'm extroverted, but when it comes to those type of situations, I'm kind of clam up. And it took me a bit to realize that these people are just human. And as long as you have something positive to say, or just they used to people not talking to them because of their status. And when you can get out that, they appreciate it. So, so I commend you for that, because it's been times early in my career. I can even give you an example. Here at Microsoft, I reached out to the VP of a partner services, Tyler Bryson. I was 5 days in a row saying, I think he just got the role, maybe a month in. He just got the role. I said, thanks for your leadership. I'm excited to work underneath you. And I would love to get 15 minutes on your calendar just to understand what you have planned for the organization. And so many people were just nervous that, like, how did you say you only been here for a couple of months? I'm like, well, this is even better for me. I get to learn his personality. And, he gave me the 15 minutes because I'm like, I don't got 30 minutes of conversation to talk to him. I just want to get to know him. What has he got planned? Share what I want to do. And then I'm going to get off. And I ended up giving him back like 3 minutes, right? Because I kept straight to my word, kept it short and concise. But now every time I get on the phone, if I ask a question, hey, Sly, how you doing? Like, we got a relationship, and end up this transpired, and I ended up doing a diversity event for the Women in Tech group, because I'm an ally on the board. And we ended up doing like getting what you're worth, how to negotiate. So I got him, Deb Cup, one of the VPs, his boss on there, Rodney Clark, another VP, CVP. And then, I got to host it because I created it. And, people came up to me like, how were you so calm? How are you so cool? Like, it's just an opportunity, right? I realized I prepared, like it took 6 months to prepare for this, right? It shouldn't have took that long. But when as being a CEO, you got your publicist, you got your personal assistant, just to get on your calendar, to get 3 high-level VPs on the calendar at the same time is hard. So I respected working with your publicists, their personal assistants, because it took a whole community. And also, I didn't do it by myself. I brought the whole Women in Tech group in there, and we collectively put on a great event, right? But usually I would never done that, because I would have said, a lot of people on the team, like, Spencer, let's go after one. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to get all 3 of them on the phone? Like, they're completely diverse, right? You got Deb Cup, who's a woman who runs the whole org. Then you got Tyler Bryson, Rodney Clark, right? So it's like, it was a multitude of perspectives that you can get. And when would you get that at one time? Usually you could get one powerhouse hitter, but you're not all 3, So, so I definitely can relate to that, because that has opened up new doors that I didn't even know that were there. And it gave me opportunities where leadership or management, they come out to me because they can see I can handle pressure in certain situations. And earlier in my career, I never did that. I was kind of stayed to myself. I knew I was smart. I could figure it out on my own, not realizing to leverage the people around me, or just, take that initiative. So taking initiative is something that I think is critical if you want to get to the places you want to go. And I also realized when you deal with death, or you deal with rough upbringings, I know tomorrow isn't promised. I pray for it is, right? So why not? What am I doing today? That's one thing I've been trying to work on, is like, stop worrying about the future, worrying about what happened in the past. What am I doing today? And if I could stay here and ease the anxiety, it helps me get to where I need to be. And I think that is what you kind of express. So I had another question. You talked about being a mom, a parent in technology. So this is something that's near and dear, because I became a parent about 3 years ago. And then I have my second son. So I'm still pretty new into the game, being a parent. And I'm still an individual contributor, at least from my day job, not including, doing a podcast and those things. And spending time, like it's like a balancing stick. You want stuff you want to achieve, but you got time that you will never get back. Like my daughter will never be 10 months again. You know what I'm saying? Like when I got her, like she's 3, she looks completely different, feels different. So like with my son, I made sure to maximize, the parental leave, right? So question for you then is, how do you do that? Because when you said you're doing it, it seemed like you was extending into your leadership career of being a people manager. And as you go through those ranks, I'm assuming the requirements, the stress, the workload triples, right? Even though you have a team might help you on the way. How did that impact you as a mom?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was tough, right? So my girls, I have 2 girls. They are now grown, but they're 18 months apart. So in some ways, it felt like I had twins a lot of times. So when they were little, and when they were young, is when I was really trying to advance my career. So there were so many times where I had to make choices and I felt guilty about it. So there'd be after work things or extended travel. And sometimes I just had to say no, because I would really look inside and say, what is the most important thing to me? Is it getting a bigger job and more money, or is it my kids and my husband? And most of the time, I would try to balance and be there for my kids and my husband. And but there are times I feel like it did, hold me back, where all the guys would be able to go out. They didn't care. They didn't. I wanted to get home to put my kids to bed, right? Because they didn't get to see mommy, right? And I wanted to see them, and they wanted to see me. But I stayed pretty strong, and I thought, when I'm at work, I am going to give 100% and plus, right? From the time I walk in the door to the time I leave. But when I leave, I want to be for my kid. I want to be there for my kids. And I can't say, I don't think it held me back. I think in my head, I thought it was holding me back, right? I thought, oh, I'm not going to get this or that. But ultimately, when I look back at my career and where I'm at, I don't think it held me back. It was in my own head. So my advice on that to everybody is, just like you said, Sly, you can't get that time back ever with your kids and with your husband. And in my case, right, I don't want to cry here, but I lost my husband unexpectedly. And, so like you said, you never know. And putting them as priority is important, and it is a balance, and it does cause some internal stress. And honestly, if you're at a company and they don't support a work-life balance, go find one that does. Because you know what? They're all out there. There's a lot of companies that will provide you and give you opportunities to have balance. I mean, you have to work hard when you're working, but it's equally important to be engaged when you're done with work with your family. And that's my advice. And it was hard, I'm not going to lie, especially coming up, in the 80s and the 90s and early 2000s. We're in a different place, thank goodness, today, 2022, than we were back when my kids were little. But that's my advice.
And that's, first of all, thanks for being so candid, because I know it got to be tough just looking back at the time, especially losing a loved one. I can't even imagine the feeling that is, losing my wife. That'd be hard to move on, but I know I would have to, right? Vice versa for her. I know she would have to too, right? So thank you for sharing that. I think I just say, like, when I had my daughter, I worked at a startup, and at a startup, I was a director. So I finally got into that management role. But I realized I picked it at the wrong time. Just had my daughter, just moved to Brooklyn, so new scenery. My wife, small town, different adjustment. Her family is a little bit further. My family is closer, trying to deal with that dynamic. And that was hard, man. And like 5 months, of just like sacrifices or things I had to work on. So I was like, you know what? I love it. The company is cool, but it's not right for me right now, right? So, let me go back to a bigger company where I can get that flexibility, that time, to work on, right? So just sometimes you got to know where you are, what are you willing to sacrifice? Some people are like, man, that company is doing great right now, right? You probably be close to getting retiring, right? But then I would have missed so many things that I experienced along those 3 years right now. Because I was working like 140 hours, 110 hours easily a week, So to me, it wasn't sustainable, and I didn't want to sustain it, right? So I think that was something that you got to define what you want, right? In different times in your life. If you're 19, I say go for it, right? Because if I was 19 and I had that grind, I would have been there every day. I probably had a knapsack, so sleeping there, But once I had my daughter, it changed. When I got my son now, it changed. Certain things like travel is different now. I travel for work a lot. I don't want to go as long as I used to, So, or unless I'm bringing the family with me, it's pretty cool. But that was great. This leads right into your passion. What is it? And would you mind sharing it?
Well, my personal passion, and I kind of touched on it a second ago in a couple of ways, is really to inspire women in particular, because I am one, right, to get into the tech world. Far too few enter into the tech world. And so I had the opportunity, as I mentioned, when I went to Project Lead the Way, to be a role model to some degree in STEM education as a female CTO. And then also my conversation with Michael Dell, and just everything I do, I have 2 daughters, right? And you and I, Sly, talked about your daughter, right? Which is why you started this. And, I want to be a role model. I want to try to be the best role model I can. I want to show people, women, girls, that, IT is not just about sitting behind your computer and coding all day. It can be, if that's what you want to do and that's your personality, or it can be in a position where I'm more out there, front and center, and leading strategy and driving the direction of companies. And so I just, that's my passion, and I love doing it. And I try, whenever I meet people, I try to encourage them, and especially young ones who haven't picked where they want to go to college or what they want to study. I always try to sell them on, IT, right, and tech, and that it's everything touches tech.
No, that's great. And
go for it. Right?
And I'm glad that you did that. That's one of the reasons I'm glad that when your publicist reached out and I did some research, I could tell that you're trying to make those inroads, because what you shared today is going to be empowering. How many times you get this type of, organic information from someone at your level, right? It's hard to have those conversations. So that's one of the reasons why I started it. Yeah, my daughter was one of the driving factors, but there's also, you get to a point in life where you no longer can ignore something, right? Like I know women, the movement and power has been going on for years, right? For centuries, right? And I got to a point with my daughter, I told myself, I no longer can ignore this. I can no longer be in a room where I see a lady being put down, but I'm not there to help her unless she wants that help, or if I see her voice isn't there. And it's also to show those other men, other children, other boys, my son, that you could be part of something that is bigger than yourself. So, it started for my daughter, but now I'm understanding it's bigger than that, because I no longer can say no. And I wish, like, I tried to interview someone else and they called me out, like, it took you to your daughter to see this? And I was like, no, I saw it before. This was the reason for me to do something. Like, I wasn't like I was a bad person before. I just didn't know how to show those emotions, right? I didn't know how to make an impact. And I told, just like I told the other lady, I was like, I'm glad I'm doing it now. I can't tell you why I didn't do it in the past. Right. And I know a lot of men do this when we get our daughters, we change, right? When we should have probably been doing this before, right? So I just want to be a part of that change. Or maybe my son, he don't got to wait that long, right? So he can start his whole life knowing that this is something that is expected of him, right? To be a part of the team, be a part of the human race, and, be a part of this women empowerment, because eventually it's going to be empowerment. It won't just be women empowerment, it's human empowerment, right? So, so I'm glad that you say that. So that's kind of, I'm glad that I had my daughter first, and I wanted a daughter, right? So some people used to come up to me and ask me, did you want a daughter? And I was like, I wanted a healthy kid. So yes, yes or no, man. To me, it didn't matter what I got, so, and I'm a girl dad through and through, right? So I'm glad I could definitely I love what you're doing. I love how you're giving your time and the impact you're making. So can you give me, you kind of talked about this a little bit, but can you tell me about a time you felt as a female industry and that you was going through something and you had to overcome it? Would you share that? You kind of shared it earlier with the CIO meeting Michael Dell. Is there any other situations where as a female, you realized it was like, you had to get over that obstacle? What did you do to kind of get through that? Because I know the ladies that listen to it right now might be going through something right now, and they might need your words or the way that you went about overcoming the obstacle that was presented in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, I did touch on a couple. I think the one thing I want to leave the audience with, and someone years ago told me this, and I didn't understand it, but I'll say it's lonely at the top. That's the term, right? That I want to talk about. The higher you go in an organization, the less people inside of the company that you can really talk to. And as a female, I don't know, I'm not a guy, so I don't know, but it seems like guys are better at holding stuff in, right? But as a woman, I'm expressive. That's what makes me a woman. I like that about myself. But the higher I have gone in my career, the less and less I can talk to people around me in the company, because it's not appropriate to share some of your fears and your doubts and your insecurities with your people who report to you. If you have peers, you can kind of talk to them and your boss. But now as a CEO, I'm at the top, right? So there's nobody to talk to. And I just think it's important for the audience to know that, but that doesn't mean you have to be alone. So that's where it's very important. And what I've had to do and get much better at as I move up in my career is to reach out to people that I trust, other professionals, other people that I can bond with, that I can talk to, that I can run ideas by in a safe environment. And so I'm doing it all the time. I'm doing it all the time right now. I was in an event last weekend and met a beautiful younger CEO woman who we just started having this conversation, and she and I now are connected, and I'm going to mentor her. And I'm sure she'll teach me things as well, because that's just what happens, right? So you just need to find others that you can trust. And it's okay to say, hey, I don't know how to do this. Please help me, right? I don't know how to build an infrastructure and cloud program. I don't know the best way to drive sales. I don't know the best way to handle this very difficult employee situation, right? It's okay to have those conversations with people. And I have to do it all the time. And that means I have to be vulnerable. And it's scary. But at the end of the day, it's been rewarding, and I try really hard to be that person for others as well. Yeah, that's what I would leave them with.
And that's beautiful. And that vulnerability piece is critical. We was reading a book at Microsoft, and it was Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, and it talks about being vulnerable. And I realized that I put that armor up often. And like you said, I can close myself off pretty easily. But again, you still want to talk. Like certain things I can't talk with my colleagues, right? If I felt like I was slighted because maybe of my color, now that, that's not something I'm going through, but it has happened in the past. Certain colleagues I can't share that with because, they're going to feel some type of way about it, right? So I had to find mentors who could relate. Or even when you're individual contributor, after you make a certain amount, you can't share that with everyone, because if they're not making that amount, they can't relate. Or you might just outgrow certain people. Like I know sometimes the conversations I have now, they can't relate. So they don't know why I'm complaining. Like, Sly, you make a lot. So why are you complaining? You can't be upset. Look at what you have. I'm like, well, the things is not what is important. Is, it's like what's going on mentally. And sometimes you want to strategize. Sometimes you want to be able to make that, to be able to have someone to relate, to understand you, right? So, finding, peer groups, finding outlets, teams, groups, like even, me doing this one in a podcast, I got to meet people, to talk about where I wanted to go as a person. I got to meet people like yourself who's already been doing some trails blazing, right? Then I also have like mastermind meetups with my friends where we could talk about being dads and what things are we overcoming, and being a little bit more emotional, right? Because sometimes when I growing up, the guy wasn't supposed to cry, the guy wasn't supposed to show emotion, and or the guy was supposed to leave. I was like, if my wife got a better idea than me, to me, I'd be a stay-at-home dad tomorrow. She told me she got $1 million idea. I have no shame in my game, So it's all about, being able to have those conversations. And also, and I think mental health, you indirectly talked about, right? I had to get a therapist, certain things growing up, how I grew up, you got to talk to someone else, and it's okay to do that, right? First I didn't want to do it, right? But luckily, went to Microsoft, they give you free therapist sessions. Like, hold on, let me try this out. Let's see how it goes. And it was good to have someone you can have those conversations, strategize, because we all need it. We need someone to talk to. And I can only imagine being a CEO, a global company. When we're coming as individual contributors and employees, we expect you to have the answer, right? We expect you to be strong. And when you're a leader or you're the general, or you maybe the oldest, growing up, so you got to show that that ability to lead, and use it in confidence. I mean, and by the confidence you portray. But sometimes it's like, when do you get a chance to whose shoulder do you lead on, right? I see that in this in families, friends, and organizations, right? It's the person who's always the one you come to for assistance. When do they get a chance to breathe when they have those questions, right? I haven't seen that with my parents, right? My parents, mom and dad, are phenomenal. Some days I know they get tired. I'm like, when you want to talk, I go out, we go eat, and I'll listen, be there for them, because they always there for me, right? So when do you turn it around? So I'm glad that you share that. I guess this goes perfectly into the next question. What can we do to help each other?
Yeah, I mean, it touched on a little bit, mentor and coach, support each other. You mentioned it earlier, as males, right? Support females when you see their voices not being heard, which is so irritating. I'll just tell you, as a female, when I say something and then no one pays attention, 5 minutes later, my male counterpart said the same thing, and they get all the like, oh, that's an awesome idea. And I'm like, hey, I just said it 5 minutes ago, but they didn't hear my voice, right? If you as a male see that, give your female counterpart the voice. Let her voice be heard and acknowledge that, right? So men can help women, women can help women. Just, support it comes into support each other and be there. And when someone is vulnerable, let them feel safe and take them in and help each other.
That's great. I think that's something that it needs to be talked about more, right? Matter race, creed, sexual orientation. We all got injustices. So when the next person is talking, just listen. There's no need to share a story to try to connect. Like, I don't try to have a story to match your story, right? It's just to listen and really be there for them. And that's the best thing you can do, because time and time again, I will say similar to you. I would say something, right? And someone else would say it, and they'd be like, this is the best idea ever. I'm like, hold on, I just said that, right? or I've been on part of it. I would get all the credit, and I'm like, the other lady on the team did all the work. You know what I'm saying? I just came in and cleaned it up, made it look nice. So me being me, I'm like, well, Valerie did all the work. I just helped out. I'm glad to be a part of the team. But Valerie, would you want to say something? Because I think you're the person supposed to have this mic, right? It's okay of repositioning where the light's supposed to be at. And it's also okay not to do anything if the other person doesn't want you to either, right? And don't be upset when your help isn't needed, right? Because sometimes you don't want to be helped, right? I realize sometimes the best thing to do is not to make it a big deal because the person's not comfortable with it, right? So I'm glad that you share that. So I don't like to end this call because I felt like we talking on a lot of deep topics. We being so transparent, we being vulnerable. And I think just some great synergy here, but we got to end it, right? So before we do, how can the audience reach you?
Yeah, well, one way is to go to our company website, revtech360.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Valerie Osinski is my name on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest. I can be contacted through our website or, of course, through LinkedIn. And if you just, in your LinkedIn Connect request, if you just say, you heard me on this, I'll accept it and we can start a conversation.
That's awesome. Well, until next time, Sly Gittens and Valerie are out. Peace.